Homemade African planes are becoming increasingly popular, and while some people managed to get theirs to fly, others discovered that gravity is undefeated.
I'll go back to the drawing board and design the landing gear better.
Meet Gabriel Nderitu, a man so optimistic he makes motivational speakers look pessimistic. Gabriel is getting closer to his lifelong dream of flying his own aircraft. Assuming closer means still firmly planted on the ground. He's even branded his aircraft with the romantic name Upendo, which is Swahili for love. Clearly, this is a love story, but with a bitter ending. As he prepares for takeoff in his Upendo aircraft, Nderitu, with almost no aircraft experience, but all the confidence in the world, checks his aircraft with the seriousness of a NASA engineer. You've got to admire the dedication. He's like a chef who's never cooked before, but insists on preparing a 5-course meal. He's determined to be successful this time because his previous 12 attempts have all failed. That's not persistence. That's a scientific study in how many ways one aircraft can disappoint you. At this point, the ground has seen more of Upendo than the sky ever will. To everyone's surprise, including probably his own, Upendo glides across the makeshift runway and even manages to get airborne. But as always, Upendo comes crashing down almost immediately. Even nature seems to be against Nderitu, but Nderitu is not one to give up so easily. He looks over the ruins of his Upendo, undeterred, determined to fulfill his lifelong dream someday.
And if we do not succeed, somebody somewhere else in Kenya will probably complete this work, and he will not start where I started.
10 months later, our genius inventor finally abandons his aircraft project for a more realistic green energy project.
It is a hybrid system. Basically, by hybrid, we mean two sources of energy combining to provide a particular need. In this case, the two sources are solar and wind turbine.
Perhaps he finally discovered that solar panels don't crash. Meanwhile, in Eswatini, a man decides to make his own little bird. Though simple and small, the design looks very promising, almost as if it would work, almost being the key word here. Soon, it's time for takeoff. The helicopter blades begin to spin with all the enthusiasm of a ceiling fan on a hot day. But the aircraft seems too concerned with workplace safety and decides not to get off the ground. It's like the helicopter took one look around and said, "You know what? I'm comfortable right here, thanks." Talk about a grounded aircraft. Even the plane doesn't trust his inventor. Ugandan inventor Joseph Nkaheza gets inspiration for a helicopter while repairing a fan. A mechanic by profession, Nkaheza is determined to make a helicopter despite having almost no knowledge of planes. But hey, who needs aeronautical engineering when you have confidence and a toolbox? He assembles every scrap piece of metal he can find and makes a quite unique design, unlike any helicopter we've seen before. And there's probably a very good reason why no one has seen this design before, because helicopters that look like this usually exist only in nightmares and abstract art. On testing day, Nkaheza steps into his chopper, ready to show what his little invention can do. For a moment, he seemed to be doing pretty well with it. But just when you think everything's going smoothly, this happened. That's what happens when you try to land a plane without any flying experience. The crash didn't hurt Nkaheza too much, besides the few months he spent in the hospital. He is determined to learn from it and deploy new tech for his next design.
I previously failed to land, so I switched the engine off. It came down, and during the crash, I got both my hands broken. I learned the lesson, and I have now added technology.
Fiseha Bayene is an Ethiopian man, passionate about making his own aircraft, and after years of designing, his masterpiece is finally ready for its flight. Or more accurately, test drive. He and his collaborators push the aircraft onto the stretch of road meant to act as the runway. They seem fulfilled, happy, and confident that their design will work. Bayene even appears to be giving them some instructions, as if he has any idea what he's doing. Beside the runway, a lot of people gather to watch this wonderful invention, expecting to see a plane take off. Instead, they get the show of their lives. A very poorly constructed car that runs around aimlessly. Bayani's invention is a plane in every way except for the minor detail of, flying. But at least Bayani managed to come up with a good design. The next aircraft was so terrible that it looked like it could fall apart at any time. A man attempts to construct a helicopter, but his creation is basically a tricycle with an identity crisis. From its appearance, it's clear he's never seen an actual helicopter in his life, maybe just heard someone describe one over a bad phone connection. As the two men power up the aircraft to test it, the engine sounds closer to a milling machine than a helicopter. It's the kind of sound that makes you think, that's not taking off, that's taking apart. But they believe in their invention, so they continue with the tests as planned. However, as they move along the runway, it becomes clear that their invention is never leaving the ground, and their helicopter is nothing but a glorified tricycle with a very loud engine. Two brothers in Ghana have been working on their homemade aircraft for years, and their design is pretty impressive. Despite using local materials like plywood and aluminum sheets, the brothers came up with an impressive design that looks almost like a real plane. But here's where things get interesting. They somehow forgot to include a space for the battery when building the plane. It's like building a beautiful house and forgetting to install doors. So now they're forced to use an external battery to test the aircraft. Once the engine sparks to life, the brothers decide to take the plane for a short test ride. They claim the plane can fly, but they are unable to fly because they do not have the necessary licenses. So let me get this straight. You built a plane that can supposedly fly, but you can't fly it because of paperwork?
If I stand up and say I will do something, I just started and doing it.
We can use this aircraft for police to patrol around, and also for our hospitals to also spray as a mosquito insecticide, and also for farming to sprinkle the water to their farmings. We can also build as a cargo aircraft that can load things from a place to another place.
Good luck using a plane that can't even get off the ground to transport cargo. Kenya is home to some of Africa's biggest inventors, and leading the charge is 21-year-old engineering graduate George Tamuti. Fresh out of school with a degree and a dream, George has set his sights on making what he describes as a microlight.
Microlight is a type of aircraft that is designed for one or two passengers.
Now, I don't want to be that guy, but his microlight bears an uncanny resemblance to what the rest of us would call a regular glider. It's like calling a bicycle a ground-based personal transportation device. Technically accurate, but we all know what it really is. Like the expert engineer he is, George meticulously checks through his aircraft's engine to make sure everything is in place for his test flight. Then comes the moment of truth. George straps himself to his microlight, ready for his test flight. The crowd gathers, cameras start rolling, and everyone holds their breath, waiting to witness aviation history. Except George hits us with a plot twist nobody saw coming. He can't actually fly it because he doesn't have the required aviation license. But here's the thing. There's no guarantee Tamuti's microlight would actually fly anyway, especially considering it's powered by a 200-horsepower engine. While George Tamuti may have been unlucky, the next guy on our list at least got his chance to soar with the birds, and he didn't just fly. He flew as high as a normal helicopter. Granted, it was with a weird-shaped rotor that looked like it had been stolen from a scrapyard. But hey, we're not judging. Sometimes the best inventions come from the most unexpected places. The next inventor on our list couldn't get materials for a real plane, so he built this instead. Unfortunately, he couldn't get it to fly. Now, if you think you've seen some fancy aircraft so far, wait until you see our next pilot. This guy didn't just build an aircraft, he actually built a jet. However, he still has a long way to go. The engine is far from complete, but Chris is still optimistic that he will finish his jet one day.
As we take this project up, I expect to be one of the participating flying pilots for this project.
You've got to admire that kind of ambition.